So once again, thank you so much for joining today's session. And one of the things I really appreciate about you all is accepting failure, because our first attempt last week with LinkedIn didn't go as planned. So it just shows that, when we accept failure, sometimes we're able to pivot and also learn from it. And I'm hoping today will go better. But also, if there are any challenges, or if you have challenges, as Gerald has mentioned, yes, we will take that into consideration. So this is the first of the Lean Monthly Conversations that the goal of having these monthly conversations is actually, one, to create more awareness about these basic Lean principles that I and other consultants in the country have actually been humbled to know about, because they do wonders, yet the general public is not really aware of them. For those who've done some engineering, I think they may, if they did Toyota production system, but sometimes these even they're not, they're often ignored. So the idea is to create more awareness to that. But secondly, is to create a platform where Lean consultants can actually share what they have with those interested. It's a 1-hour session, so 30 minutes for presenting a brief on a topic. So bear with us, you'll not be able to know everything on a certain topic, but it's just to give you a glimpse of what these are. There'll be additional resources and also our websites, but also there are additional services that you may be interested in. And I and also other consultants will be joining us. So for next month, we have Rosalind from Top Tier Management Consulting. I've also got a few other great panelists coming up in subsequent months. Some of them have worked with Kenya Airways when they're doing great stuff. I know now they're struggling, but they have a lot of skills to share with us. So just very briefly, our focus today is the 8 Lean ways, and to help us figure out the practical ways to improve your bottom line in 2023. So I'm pleased we are starting at the beginning of the year, today being 1st of February. As an organization, so SWOT Agile, we focus on Lean process digitizations, organization capability assessment, and Lean and Six Sigma courses and certification. So the goal and our mission is actually to help businesses deliver better results faster. And we do this by helping to build smart and happier teams, and through eliminations of inefficiencies and workflows. The other thing that we've been very humble to do is actually increase return on investments on automation and digitization. Major challenges of companies in this age is we feel like we have to automate, and it sounds great. And a lot of companies are spending so much money, millions, into technologies just for them to say that to sit underutilized or to have employees working backwards. So how can you ensure your human and technology capabilities are aligned? Our approach is based on making sure you understand the psychological principles. We're human beings, so we've got some weird habits, but we also have some great potentials. So how we can link our daily behaviors to how our brain works is really important. So it's good for managers, especially managers, I would say, to have a basic understanding of psychology, but also combine this with other principles of Lean, Agile, Six Sigma, this TQM, that's total quality management, that has also been implemented. So we combine a lot of approaches, but our main focus is this for Lean, Agile, Six Sigma, and psychology. So one thing that we may want to ask ourselves is, we are all businessmen, or we have organizations that we are running. And our key goals are, more growth, more customers, and lower costs. And if someone would like to interrupt, there'll be a session for questions at the end. But if there's a burning question that you don't understand, we're a small class. So just raise your hand or unmute and shoot a question. When we're looking at customer satisfaction, there are actually just 3 elements that customers has and requirements. So one is time requirement, the second one is cost, and the third one is quality. Am I getting my good on time? Am I being served if I'm working with a team leader, or if I'm a junior staff, am I getting feedback on time? How much time does it cost? How much does it cost for me to get a product or a service from a provider? And this also, I would love us to, as we go through this entire session, please look at 2 customers on 2 fronts. So you've got the internal customer, who's the employees of the company. So if you're a manager, your internal customers are your staff who are reporting to you, and vice versa. If you're a staff, your internal customers are your other staff and your managers. So how often do you give quality work to them? When we're looking at main frustrations for customers, especially external customers, but to an extent, I would also say internal customers, is often how often, calling a business more than once or requesting for that report more than once. When you have to repeat information, so whether it's a manager or a customer talking to a customer agent, this is what I want. And then the next time they find a different customer agent, and they have to repeat the same information. This is very common, unfortunately, in our Kenyan system, where we have a lot of customer centers, but they don't have a really good way of picking up calls that have dropped. So it's often very frustrating if you call, like if I call my bank and I drop, then I call and I speak to someone else, or worst case scenario, I call them, they don't respond, I send them an email. So how often do your customers, do your team members have to switch communication so that they can get something done? The other thing that I'd love us to also think about is it's common to see businesses measuring customer satisfaction by their willingness to buy something or how often they would recommend the product. Well, these are not bad things to do for a business. It's really critical that we realize customer loyalty is actually determined by customer effort. What does that mean? The more obstacles a customer face, the higher they're frustrated. If you're frustrated as a customer, it's really hard for you to buy more. So you might say, okay, they have this really, really nice product, but they take a long time to respond to my queries, or I have to request for something, takes 3 days. I have to request for insurance. They send me wrong forms. So why should I be frustrated to buy a product? It should be, seamless and easy. So the less effort they use, the more they'll be able to buy more products, or the higher the chances of you having repeat business. So loyal customers, repeat purchases. And as I mentioned earlier, internal customers, loyal employees, higher productivity. And less effort shouldn't be associated with being lazy. No, that's not what this is all about. It's about how do you work smart? How do you make your processes work for you? So that both the employees, the managers, the stakeholders, investors are all happy people, and also the external customer. So why does loyalty matter? In a business setup that we have, especially in, we're really in a tricky situation, as we've seen in Kenya. We're all struggling with everything has gone up, all the costs are going up. I just read this morning that we'll be paying toll congestion taxes. So things are expensive. And also customers are interested in getting more value for less amount. So as business managers or staff, we've got to realize that it's really, really tough in terms of acquiring new customers. So if we look at the bottom of the slide, we've got new customer acquisitions costs have actually increased by almost 50% in the past 5 years. While if you're looking at, am I able to sell to an existing customer? 14 times more likely to sell to an existing customer than a new one. And existing customers are also willing to test new products because they know they have a history with you. They know what kind of quality you're providing. They understand the frustrations or the better service they'll get. New customers with like a new product, no, it's really, really hard to convince them. But the best part about having higher retention is the Harvard Business School has actually given a wide range, so we can take it with a pinch of salt. But it's the article established that you can increase your profit by between 25 to 95%, which is huge, if you just increase your retention by 5%. That's something to think about on why we need to reduce customer effort. Sometimes you might be like, yeah, I'm making profit, this is great. But if you're having high sales, so for instance, if your sales are low and cost of operations are high, then you're going out of business soon because there's no way you're going to survive. However, the tricky situation is often when your sales are high, but your operation costs are high. So on the other hand, your top line is doing great. You're like, yes, we've hit our top line for June for 2023. We've actually had more revenue compared to last year. But when you look at the bottom line, you realize, wait, where did all that money go? So you're bleeding, but you have no idea why, because you're all very excited about making more sales, but not really looking at your operations costs. But if your operations costs are low, and or your revenue is also low, then you're bleeding, and you know why? Because you can see you don't even have the money to cover the basic cost, not alone the profit. So then you have to think, I think there's a bit of awareness with managers to say, okay, we are in a situation that we have to really increase our revenue. So this is the time where some businesses start pushing, okay, we need to increase our top line. But if they're not careful, they'll end on to the bleeding and not knowing why when they have high revenue, but also low, but also high operation costs. The sweetest spot is actually to have high revenue and low operation costs. How do you get to this? And this is part of what the lean principles very basically. I like to translate it as kuendelea kuboresha. I know we have a few lean consultants who've joined us today, so we can debate about that. But kuendelea kuboresha is actually continuous improvement. How do we continuously improve ourselves? So it's about people, process, and success. You need to figure out how to grow people who simplify the processes to make success easy. What does this mean? When we're talking about lean principles, the idea is everyone in the organization. So first we can look at it from the CEO all the way to the cleaner or the watchman. They need to have their capacity built up so that they're able to improve their work. And by doing that, they're able to identify and eliminate wastes In this case, we refer to waste as the inefficiencies. And you can only make success easy if you have very little inefficiencies within the process. Process, whatever it's garbage in, garbage out, great input into your process, result into great output. So one of the challenges often business face is they tend to request, if they're to meet a target, you'll hear managers constantly say, okay, I want you to do whatever, anything you want, you need to do, I just need that money in. I just need that target met. So whatever you do, I don't care. But what that means is they might meet that quarterly target of revenue, but then it's really, really hard. And we'll look a little bit at this, why it's really important to have a simplified process. So for you to have a simplified waste-free process, you really have to be able to understand what is value and what is non-value added. So you need to remember that first, value added, you need to, what is valuable to your customer is really, really critical. You need to understand what is not required. And the last thing is, whatever is not required that you need, that can be eliminated, you need to stop doing. So value is defined as one thing that transforms. And by this, I mean, if you're filling up a purchase order, for it to be a value-added activity is one, you got this form, let's assume it's even manual or E, you fill in the information correctly. And once you filled in the information correctly, means it's been done the first time round. And by the time you submit it to the approver, then in that case, it's value add. So it's the same thing if it's a form or if it's a good that you deliver to a customer, you've done it, you've transported it from one place to another. The customer is willing to pay for it, whether immediately or later, it's not an issue. So value added activity is something that transforms, that's from one point to another. So this added information or added composition of that product. If you're looking at a manufactured product, is taking raw materials and changing it into something else. Then the second bit that you really need to understand is, this is where we have the KRA, compliance. So the businesses non-value add. So they do not add value to the customer directly, but they must be done because they're required for internal control systems, regulations, system capabilities, risk management, or policies within a country or geography. And we can't avoid them. So compliance is really critical. It's a lot of work, you all agree, but when you're looking at the customer, they don't necessarily add value to what service you're giving, but it helps in a way to protect the reputation of the business and for customers control, making sure the business is actually giving quality products in some cases. The part that we really need to think about is the type 2 non-value added activities. One is customer will not pay for it, serves no purpose, immediately avoidable, causes loss of time, cost, and quality. So it actually reduces or inhibits the 3 requirements of the customer, so that the time, cost, and quality. So this is where we have the 8 lean wastes. So when we're looking at the inefficiencies in the businesses, sometimes what businesses I see do incorrectly, I would say, or poorly, is often they bring in more additional training to when they've not really reduced inefficiencies. So if you look at this picture, I know it's really dry right now, but hopefully rains will come. But if you look at this gentleman, he's weeding. He's not planting beans inside the, a farm that's full of weeds. He's not doing that. And there's no way a customer will pay for the weeds. Like, the customer wants a nice, juicy maize cob. So one of the things our businesses generally do that's not helpful, especially for the bottom line, is adding quotes more investment into new areas without really looking at the inefficiencies within the businesses. So one of the things is you need to prioritize reduction of inefficiencies before investing in technology or other capabilities. These are the 8 weights. They are called Muda in Japanese. And the 8 weights in general are, defects, errors or reworks, overproductions, waits and delays, non-utilized talent, excess transportation or conveyance, excess inventory, excess motion, and extra processing. So now we'll quickly just go through each one of them. And I'm hoping you guys can come up with the acronym just to see what comes down. So as I go through the 8 ways, just write down the first letter of each of the lean ways. So just as I mentioned before is, waste is inefficiency that directly and negatively impacts your business's operations, customers' profit and fraud. So defect is not doing things the right time, not doing things right the first time. So this results in poorly made or designed products or services or decisions. How do we spot it is when we are correcting, editing, redoing returns, customer complaints. So a good example is a defect is this training was supposed to happen last week, but it didn't happen. So it's a repeat. So it's a defect. And if you look at when you go to a restaurant and you request for, let's say, dawa, and you know how in your mind, the consistency of how that dawa is supposed to come. And then the customer brings it, but instead of enough ginger or it has a lot of garlic and you're not able to drink it. So you'll request for a refill. But this second refill is going to come to you, but you're not going to pay for it. The customer only paid for the first one. So when we're looking at errors that are being done, the consequences often loss for some businesses is loss of sales, there's damaged brand, delayed deliveries, lead time, and also higher cost and for labor. But one of the things we need to also think about is what is the vicious cycle of poor quality in general? Especially if it's done recurrently, one of the things that we also have to be careful is as much as we're striving for perfections, we need to be aware we're not perfect. So mistakes are part of learning. So you need to distinguish when learning is important for people to make mistakes. And we look at this in one of the ways coming up. So when there are avoidable mistakes, then there's extensive corrections. And part of that is also there's a lot of blame game in firefighting because you want this target met at the 11th hour. Luckily, we are very smart. And where there's a will, as I always say, there's a way. So teams will get things done under pressure. The only problem with that is they're so exhausted. They're like, okay, this is done. we are happy, we met the target, our bosses are happy, and then they're like relaxing. So then the same mistakes gets repeated in the next cycle. The second one is overproduction, producing more or sooner than needed. So for manufacturing, this seems clear, but for today's sessions, I'd also want for you all to think more within your offices, within your businesses, the services that you offer amongst yourself, but also with your customers. Because overproduction with manufacturing is very clear. If you overproduce, it's good sometimes to have a buffer, but beyond that buffer, it's not really useful because you have to get excess storage space. But something that often happens in businesses is we produce more than needed or sooner than needed. So the result is accumulation of work in progress. So you've got either you've got a few staff or you've got people who are not doing the work promptly. But also, how often do you receive a detailed report that you're like, I don't have time to read, where this page could just have been summarized? Remember, someone spent their time or days, goes back and forth with this report. And then you've got detailed process manuals. And my favorite is actually replying to all. How often do you get so much information in your inbox that you're not able to process? That is overproduction because someone actually sent it. And I know with emails, we tend to assume we are not taking storage space, or we are. So as businesses, we need to be aware because the cloud space is also eating into our profits, especially if it's unnecessary communications. So again, it's higher cost for storage and labor. And then there's also hindrance to workflow, and there's just a lot of clutter. Then the next one is waits. So incomplete work, because your employees are waiting for approvals, instructions, and sometimes it's not, just to be clear, it's just not the junior staff or subordinates, but sometimes it's also managers who have to wait for information from their juniors. So anytime there's a complete work due to information that's not been submitted or machines are underutilized, then there waits. And the challenge with waits is they keep us from making progress, and customers don't like waiting. When there are excessive delays, then we have to replan, speed up, and work around. We love shortcuts sometimes, and sometimes the reason why staff do not follow processes is because they're like, wait, but we waited for information, but we didn't get it. So we just decided to do it our way, or this process is too long. So there's also excess inventory and all cost from lower productivity. So how can we reduce this? Just remember that great things to a certain extent come to those who don't wait. So for us to succeed in life, there's need to be a sense of urgency in getting things done. So yes, we can have a laid back approach, but there's certain things that we need to get done promptly. So whether we need to review our processes to see what are some of the unnecessary approvals, if they're there, that are causing delays and stuff. And then the next one is actually non-utilized talent. This initially wasn't one of the 8 ways, one of the 7. Initially there were 7, but after some discussions in industries, it was introduced as the 8th, because what is often common is underutilized or mismatched employee skill sets. How do you spot it? Is low staff morale, little or no creativity or innovation, and something that we'll briefly talk about is command and control management style and how it stifles creativity. And the consequences for this, it prevents employees from giving their best. Sometimes we say, oh, I respect my employees, but you don't really listen to them. So then it becomes tricky for them to express themselves or express their creativity. And innovation and improvements are rare, acceptance is the norm. So when people say yes to you a lot, just know there's something wrong. And also it's good to take into consideration that mistakes are part of learning. So if you have team members or you have managers who are scared of making mistakes, then they're not really learning. So again, this is where we have to combine learning and when making mistakes is part of the process and part of an efficient engine or an efficient system vis-a-vis not making mistakes and just accepting what's there. And if your employees are not engaged, you're paying a lot if you're senior management, high labor cost. So when as managers, you're not looking into, you think, one of my favorite examples is actually visiting water utility company in Western, and the technical manager was a water meter reader about 20 years ago. And he thought he knew what the current water meter readers were supposed to do. Yet, if you look at the scenarios are very different. 20 years ago, there wasn't automated meter reading, there wasn't mobile phones to read water meters. So it's very interesting. So this is why I like this angry woman. Let me explain how you're going to do your job better. So as a manager, do you tell people what to do, or do you create an enabling environment for them to actually express and be creative? The next one is transportation, and it's often excess. Transportation is good, but excess transportation is an issue. So it's movement of products, materials, and information. Again, if it's physical transportation, if you're in logistic business, I know a lot of businesses now have invested in tracking. So it's easy to track where your vehicle has been moving. So while that is and can be an issue that your business needs to work on, I think it's really, really important also to look at the soft part of the business. So how the chain of command in terms of review or request of information. If a CEO wanted information about a process, do they need to ask a HOD, then goes to a manager and then the process champion? Or can the CEO have a dashboard, for instance, where you can just like, okay, I want to check where this process is, or does he need to call people to get that information? Is that the good use of, a senior manager to call, whether it's an engineer to get information? And then the other common one is also sending of documents to different people, locations for signing. This is common if for organizations who still signatories is an issue that is common, and sometimes it's unfortunate. Directors insist they have to sign. But these days we've got online signing. So trying to figure out how can you reduce this taking of documents from one location to another for directors to sign or for senior managers to sign. So the back and forth of reviewing documents. So excess transportation or conveyance of information, is it cost money and time? If it's physical, it's easy to track because when they come back, the fuel will be low. But let's try and identify excess movement of documents, information that's not adding value. Excess inventory, again, from the manufacturing production perspective makes sense. And it's easy to spot. So it's having more inventory than needed. You have to review it. But again, inventory comes in when customers make orders that are not fulfilled. So you've got papers that are, or claims are not paid on time. So you've got a huge heap of claims that have not been paid. So it often results in your unhappy customers. And sometimes it's one of our clients actually, they have these challenges where, claims are not paid as within the fast in, fast out. So it leads to a lot of frustrations with customers because they're like, wait, I submitted mine and then I've heard someone else has been paid. So work in progress, whether it's physical or in your computer, those costs cost money. And sometimes you have to request for additional workspace to put in documents. Then the challenge of having excess, this is linked up to production. Overproduction is you may no longer need it after 3 weeks or a year. So as a businesses, you need to move away from just in case to just in time. This is another terminology or philosophy that's used in Lean. Then motion, excess motion. I'd love to see your screens right now and to just see how quickly can you get a document. I've seen a lot of that crowded screen in a lot of people's computer. From a general point, it looks like, oh, I'll be able to, it's just on my desktop, so I'll be able to find the document. But the reality, it's really hard. And one of the tech tips is actually putting documents on your desktop is actually slow your machine, in addition to you taking a long time. But it also means, how is your office layout? How much time does it take for an employee to print a document? So one of the evidence with excess motions was actually CoBank. We are all aware, those who are Kenyans, that CoBank has really grown and has improved their systems over the years. They did this through investing. So they had McKinsey, which is an international consulting firm, implement some of these strategies. And one of the things they realized was the amount of time staff was spending to get out, go print a document and come back, was costing to millions at the end of the month. So at the end of the year, it was just a huge drain on the business. So sometimes they're like, okay, we're going to buy one huge printer for the machines. But one of the things you're forgetting is every time someone walks to that printer, ideally they're claiming, or they're not really claiming, they are doing some work because they're going to print. But it might be helpful to buy smaller printers and put them if you have small space. And extra processing. Oh, and we are running out of time, so I'll try and wrap up so that we have time for questions. So extra processing is when you provide more than the customer is willing to provide to pay for. So customer is talking about a basic product, but you're like, I'm going to give them additional benefits without really billing it. One of the things as consultants we sometimes look at it is it's called when a customer's request for services and then we failed or they do not expect to be billed, then that becomes a challenge. For some businesses, is sometimes you feel, okay, I'm going to provide this repair work, and then the additional repair work, I forget to bill for it. So this becomes an issue. So in summary, I'm hoping you all got to downtime. So if you want to remember the 8 inefficiencies, just remember downtime. which is summarized here. And this is an example of, this was Chandarana, when we looked at one of their warehouses to identify where the inefficiencies were. So you can get back to this slide and look at it in more detail to see where some of the inefficiencies were, the 8 wastes. And this was Link. It's an online platform that's helping to increase processing. It links professionals. So if you want a fundi, or if you want repair work, you can always go to this app. And this was in 2019. They attended one of the training on Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt. And when they were reviewing their inefficiencies, they saw the highest was actually the non-value added, which was 59%. 39% was value add, and business non-value add was actually small. So they were actually doing quite well in terms of, compliance. They're doing it on time. It wasn't taking too much of their wasted effort. So that was good. So as you can see, when they drilled it down a bit, the biggest was delays, followed by unnecessary movement. And the third one was unutilized client. So when they initially implemented this, after 6 months, they were able to reduce the turnaround time by from a couple of days to about, I think initially it was about 12 hours, but then they were able to reduce up to 6 hours on average per order. And they were able to save approximately 350 staff hours per month. What also resulted is the businesses, there was a lot of delays, which means the professional folks were actually waiting for information from someone to be able to do anything. So what is your command and what is your company's DNA? I briefly talked about this. If your command and control, ideally and hopefully you're looking to be customer and people focused. If you command and control, you fix problems. So you're reactive, there's firefighting. Proactive, if you're customer oriented, you try to have a better risk management plan. One of the challenges I've seen in businesses in Kenya, risk-based management is really low. The risk management is limited to internal audit function, while so challenges are tracked on a quarterly basis, yet things often go, waiting for a quarter is a long time. So it'd be helpful if you review your risk management strategies to see how do we track it. Ideally, it should be done minimum a month, but hopefully a key element of management meetings, which perhaps happen weekly or bi-monthly. So again, do managers direct or command, or are managers coaches? There's a lot of discussions right now on soft skill building. Are you coaching or are you telling people what to do? And it's easy to tell this. If there's a low process discipline, you're probably on the command and control, because people do not appreciate or do not align or understand why they have to follow that process. If you're under command control, results are not sustainable. So you have an organization chart that goes really high and super low. So, but if you're customer and people focused, and yes, of course, there'll always be up and downs, but the differences are not that huge. And lastly, there's emphasis on more controls and audit. Managers are kings versus continuous learning, continuous innovation by everybody. So in conclusion, just need to be careful, because waste often comes disguised as work. And one of the things I love to do is, whatever you learn, there's always some homework. So as you get back to your businesses today, where can you find, I started the question with the defects, but what of these 8 ways are actually within your job? So before you even look at the organization-wide, please start with, what do I do? What are my inefficiencies? because if you're a manager, people, or if you're a staff, people will believe you, or you become a better influencer if they can actually see you're walking the talk. So please see which of these, how can you, and what are some of the 3 things you can do to eliminate it. So lastly, the second session would be in February 22nd. And we are excited. Our speaker will be Rosalind Mutai, who's Managing Director of Top Tire. She's also worked with Musk, the logistic company. So thank you so much. And questions, you can either put them on the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. Thank you. Hello? Anyone with questions? Just unmute.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello, Gerald. Yes.
Thank you for this very enlightening session. I'm glad to hear that this is done monthly. I think it's something to purpose and to put on the calendar. And thanks for giving us visibility of the next session in advance.
Thank you so much.
I'm just wondering, I mean, there's quite interesting things, yeah? So how do you put in place agile? I mean, because there's lean wastes, there's agile, there's Six Sigma. I mean, how did all this come in place? Eh?
Right. Good question. So one of the things we have to remember is each organization has, or each one of us have different habits, and each organization has a different rhythm of how they do things. While these are general tools and guidelines we can tap into, we need to tailor whatever advice works for that organization. So we may come in and see, okay, let's look at for example, if we take an example of the management of, or the running of the plant, and realize, okay, what we are seeing here are inefficiencies to do with labeling, or inefficiencies to do with inventories not properly put in. In that case, we might go for a lean tool or a Lean Six Sigma tool, which is called the 5S, to organize the factory to make sure everything is labeled properly so that it's easy for people to pick it. However, the idea of agile is to actually be able to be more springy, to be able to pick up a failure, move out, and pivot very quickly and solve the problem. So then you might decide, okay, every Monday I want to have a good overview of what's going on, but each manager has 3 minutes to do. So that's like a stand-up meeting, which is an agile based, to actually understand, okay, these are the requirements that are needed from management, but these are my challenges. And so your management meetings become smaller, shorter, but very focused. Agile is also very good when you're doing technology implementation, so that you don't spend all your time, whether it's developers, but you go by specification, specs by specs. So it's really, so the idea, these are tools, but we really need to be careful to make sure they're applicable to your scenario.
Yes, that's where I'm coming from. I think right. The quick answer is to want to do all these things.
Yes.
I mean, but I don't think that's the efficient way of doing all this, of going forward. Yeah. I just need a session where I need to understand maybe agile is a process of a new management process of working, of communicating, engaging. But at the end of the day, we also have to identify areas of inefficiencies, which we need to sort out, maybe using an agile approach. So I'm just trying to play around with these concepts to understand what is needed, because clearly 8 lean wastes, yes, they are wastes. I need to identify the wastes and work on them. I also probably need a process where we also become more efficient in the way we do our things. Maybe the new management style is the agile way of working. As you mentioned, the stand-up meetings and all that. So I think these are two concepts that we just need to understand how to implement. And it's something I would like to pick up with you at some stage. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Yes, I'll reach out with additional information and then we can speak some more.
I think, Elizabeth, the only thing I would add, hello, this is Khalid.
Yes.
The only thing I would add is if there is a lot of these things going around, all the new fads, new frameworks, they come and they go. There's Lean, Agile, Six Sigma, but then there's a lot of things which are common. So I think what I would pick is, the essence of them. So the essence of these things are probably, say, value streams and continual improvement. These things keep coming up all the time.
Yes.
And if you focus on, say, continual improvement, then you will see that, you start addressing the lean wastes as well. And if you look at value streams, then you start looking at, processing and agile and so on as well. So I think a lot of the hype around certain frameworks actually goes away when you start filtering down to the essence of what is it that we actually need to do.
Well put. Yes. Thank you, Harid. Absolutely. Any other comment, questions, concern, what's unclear? No more questions?
No, but thank you again for the session, Elizabeth.
All right, thank you so much for joining. So if there are no questions, please reach out and do join our next session. I'm excited. Rosalind will be presenting on how to link customers' needs better within your organizations. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.